Welcome to the first session of Cartesian Conflagrations by Reza Negarestani. Reza Negarestani is a philosopher. He has contributed extensively to journals and anthologies and lectured at numerous international universities and institutes. His current philosophical project is focused on rationalist universalism, beginning with the evolution of the modern system of knowledge and advancing towards contemporary philosophies of rationalism, their procedures, as well as their demands for special forms of human conduct. He is the author of Cyclonopedia from 2008 and Intelligence and Spirit from 2018. He's provided us with the following introduction to this seminar. Often introduced in the vein of a boogeyman at the center of modern philosophical cautionary tales, Descartes remains one of the most influential yet persistently controversial of all rationalists. His controversy stems mainly from two facts. One, that his legacy initiated a chain reaction at the dawn of the Enlightenment, likened by Rosalie L. Colie in Light and Enlightenment from 1957 to a series of great blazes which reached to Hobbes and Spinoza, ravished the landscape of scholastic and theological thought, with much intellectual fury, and set in motion the very process of modernizing philosophy. Second, because Descartes was a notorious critic of himself, shifting his philosophical position very thoroughly and very often from metaphysical rationalism to an unrestrained rationalism, only to arrive at a naturalist stance where the concerns of rationalism had been reckoned with the problems of methodological naturalism. The aim of this seminar is to show that the conflagrating natures of Descartes' philosophy, a mixture of high heat and enlightenment, is in its transitional and revisory ethos is still very much intact. The great fires initiated by Reza Descartes will live on. The strawmanning of René Descartes as the founder of the so-called La Nouvelle Philosophie, at best a substance dualist, and at worst a philosopher bent on laying waste to all philosophical achievements of the old world, are not merely unjustified, but also strategic falsities to stave off what Descartes had already anticipated to the determinant of philosophical forms of idleness. A second enlightenment born out of a meticulous renegotiation of boundaries between rationalism and empiricism. This seminar will engage with such problems in the philosophy of Descartes and its legacy by underscoring the insights of his so-called Leiden period, during which Descartes is, by all definitions, an intellectual persona non grata. We will subsequently investigate the achievements of his later works in light of some of the most pressing and philosophical problems today, including but not limited to those brought up by the ongoing revisions demanded by developments in AI research and calls for a rationalist empiricism. See Nathan Brown's Rationalist Empiricism, Theory of Speculative Critique. So I'll hand it off to Reza at this point, but I just want to make one quick note that because we did start this seminar 1 week later than was originally planned, we're probably going to also go 1 week later meaning the last session as of right now is scheduled for July 15th. If there's updates to that, you'll receive them through me or through emails, but just wanted to put that out there. Okay, Reza, take it away, I guess.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Hello, everyone. So this is our first session. Just before I start, Ravi, would you be able to, as attendees come, let them join the main so they can ask any sort of question or anything? Just let them in.
Yeah, I may have to extend panelist privileges to them, which
yes, if you can do that.
I think I'd have to do that I'd probably have to go individually into different emails and give people panelist permissions. So I guess if there's people watching this who want to be added as panelists, I think probably the best way to do it would be to reach out to me and just let me know, and then I can add you in manually. Just because.
Oh, you can't do it over Zoom?
I will check.
Does anyone know any solution to extending the privileges to the attendees?
One second. Someone's telling me.
Yeah, Carl
Okay,
is
yeah,
saying, yeah.
I'll just go through the whole roster then and just do that. And oh, by the way, I guess to introduce myself, my name is Raviv. I'm moderating this seminar. I'll put my email in the chat, so if anyone wants to reach out about stuff. And Matthew, yes, people who are registered as like taking this seminar for credit are automatically added as panelists. So that would presumably be why some of you got the panelist invitation already and some of you didn't. But I'll go through and add people as panelists so people can contribute.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, Carl said, yeah, promote to panelists. Okay. I'm glad you are here. First, we are going to introduce ourselves. I mean, you are going to introduce yourselves, and then I'll start with a kind of, think of this as a kind of a thriller movie, you know, except that we are going to somehow spoil the end of it right at the beginning, or kind of like a flash forward, philosophically, to certain sort of topics that we are going to bring out down the line, right? So I'm going to give a certain sort of introduction on a number of topics that we are going to unfold down the line. But now, precisely because it's introduction, we are going to see these topics through the lens of what I think is, you know, the germ, the seed of Descartes' troublemaking genius. And that's essentially, you know, the main topic of meditations. Right? The method, the special method of radical doubt, one that is not Pyrrhonic or academic skepticism, but of a different sort of a species, and what it can do to one's mind, right? Essentially, what I am going to build towards for the first couple of sessions is an introduction to a very enigmatic figure called the meditator. You know, who is a meditator in a Cartesian sense? And what is it capable of? What sort of crisis does it go through philosophically once it begins to meditate in that specific Cartesian sense? And then as we look at this enigmatic figure of the meditator, we see that this meditator is kind of like an unholy novice philosopher, right? It is what Descartes himself achieved to be, right? And what he prescribes for every human being to achieve. And then it becomes clear that once you achieve the status of this meditator, certain sort of arcane, sometimes surprising, sometimes very spooky conclusions will be reached. Right. So before then, let's start introducing. Each one can introduce themselves, and you know, all you need to say is just like a couple of lines about you know, where you are coming from, you know, what your background is, and why you have taken you know, this seminar, which is on Descartes. I mean, Descartes is not precisely these days a very fashionable figure in philosophy, but nevertheless, as I've said it in the in that introduction to the seminar, is nevertheless remains an eternal boogeyman of philosophy. And for good reasons. So, Matthew, you want to start?
Sure, thanks. Hi, I'm Matthew Stanley. I live in Sacramento, California. I'm actually on a trip right now, so I'm in a hotel, but um, I work in tech during the day, and then I work on writing and research sort of in my free time, so that's a hobby for me. I'm taking this course because I enjoyed reading Descartes in undergrad, but I realized that there's a lot of caricatures floating around about him, as you pointed out, so I thought that it would be good to return. It's been probably maybe 10 years since I've read him. So happy to be back in the text and interact with him again and have fresh eyes. My interests tend to be in modern Protestant theology, Zizek psychoanalysis, Japanese Buddhism. Those are kind of some areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about.
I see. Excellent. Thank you so much. Will?
Yeah, hi Reza.
How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Pleasure is mine.
I'm a student also at the New Center, based in the UK currently. I've been studying philosophy for a few years now, but I've never really spent like close reading time with Descartes, so thought this would be a great opportunity. I think I'm especially interested in the kind of passage from Descartes to Spinoza in the concept of the active intellect and how that moves from being personalized to impersonalized. I'm looking forward to the sessions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Please go. Bishaya?
Hi. Hi, I'm a curator based in Bangkok, Thailand. And I'm enrolling the transdisciplinary studies at the New Center. I'm looking forward to this class for a long time. Basically, it's just to know more about this pivotal figure in Western philosophy, but also kind of trying to a little bit more curious also about you too. I have your book, The Intelligence and the Spirit. I only scratch the surface of it. I think that's about it for now. Looking
Thank you
forward to
so
the
much.
class.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here. Josie?
Hi everyone. I'm Yuzi and I'm from India, and my background is primarily in um, philosophy and I've been focusing on 20th century French materialism and French vitalism, and the reason I'm interested in this seminar is because since the things I've been focusing on relate to a kind of transcendental empiricism, as Deleuze calls it, I want to see how Cartesian rationalism um, re- can prefigure that or relate to that. So I'm interested to see how this seminar affects my approach to that. That's it for
Excellent,
now.
Josie. Thank you so much. uh, Linka?
Hello, I'm Ilinka. I'm based in Munich at the moment. I have a background in philosophy and aesthetic theory, and I'm still studying at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich under Hito Steil. And I'm a student at the New Center under critical philosophy. And I work mainly in theories of cognition, computation, programming and encodings and thinking about, for example, the influence of new technology in image production per se. So I'm very interested in the seminar for example, how Descartes relates to Barth's theory of photography and generally the development of knowledge production or via advancements in technology and the kind of the placement of the observer in this relation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Freya, superb to have you back.
Hi, Reza. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And hi, everyone. I'm Freya, and I'm a PhD student at Leuphana University in Lüneburg in Germany. And I'm also a student. I'm doing the critical philosophy program. And I'm happy to be here because I was on the waiting list, and I actually was surprised that I got the panelist invitation. So I hope it's fine that I'm actually here.
Yes, of course.
And yeah, I'm mainly interested in like a Simondonian tradition of philosophy of technology, and I think because I mainly know Descartes in this sense to be like this. I guess somewhat of this scapegoat, which is always attached to this concept of mechanism. It's really important to like level things out, and I've also never been a really close reader, and yeah, so I think it's important to get a bit more into it. And Reza, I also know that I owe you an email, which has been overdue.
No, I actually owe you a massive email.
Okay, yeah, we'll write about this. But yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Is it Lachian or Lachian?
Yes, hello, I'm Lachlan Kermode. It's a Scottish name, but I'm from New Zealand. I'm a PhD student at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, in a department called Modern Culture and Media. And I'm working through kind of Marx, Lacanian psychoanalysis and mathematics at the moment, but my background is in computer science. And I'm interested in Descartes, or I came to Descartes kind of through these studies, strangely, because I wanted to understand the sort of birth of the rationalist tradition and how it has developed through dialectical thinking and a certain form of psychoanalytic critiques. So Descartes is of interest to me in that lineage.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great to have you here. Next. Arina, I think it's yours.
Hi, my name is Arina, and my background is in philosophy. I'm from Moscow and studied philosophy. I have philosophy MA, and I'm interested in mainly conceptual art, Soviet conceptual art, and it's and the Buddhism influence on it. And I took this class because I wanted to see differently the kind of basic philosopher. Like you said, it's not very fashionable, but it's Descartes' philosophy is crucial, and it kind of gets boring when you study too much. But I'm interested in experimental, maybe thought experiment side of this of his teaching. And lately I tried to recreate this thought experiment, and I'm interested in some of your thoughts about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Aaron?
Hello, Reza. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Nice to be back. I'm Aaron. I'm coming from New York. My background is in history and German, but I've been studying with the New Center for quite a while, and I'm just happy to be sort of filling in my philosophical gaps.
Me too. Me too, by teaching them.
Exactly. It's a long, slow process, and eventually we'll never run out of things to to do. So that's about it. I'm mostly very interested in skepticism at this point, in radical doubt and skepticism in Descartes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Reza?
Hi, everyone. My name is Reza Negarestani. I'm from Iran, currently living in Los Angeles. I'm based in Los Angeles. My background is in architecture. I'm an artist in architecture and currently a certificate student in New Center in history, design, and work making major. Total beginning in philosophy, but interested. And this is my second seminar with Reza Negarestani the Great. And so grateful to be here. And currently I'm a AMARC student in SciArc as well too. And reason to join the seminar is basically the Descartes relationship with the mathematics and geometry and the famous Descartes doubt and skepticism. And also there's another topic of the Descartes which is called معرفت یقینی, but I don't know the translation.
Intellectual intuition.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, hope that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Gabby?
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabby. I'm from Mexico City. I'm a certificate student on the critical philosophy program. I'm also simultaneously enrolled I'm just finishing my first semester at a PhD at UNAM on art history. I'm mostly focused on contemporary art, and I'm considering like the love-hate triangle between art, fashion, and commodity and identity. I guess it's a triangle that then has this really weird consumerist identity thing. But I did my master's on Sylvia Wynter's work, and I realized when I was reading about this seminar that I really took the Cartesian divide very for granted for like my entire life, maybe. Also very interested in feeling that it feels like a pretty big gap to fill, but yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
Thank you so much. Jiao? Next. Jiao, I think it's your turn.
I think it's Caio.
Yes, thank you so much for correcting.
Italian ciao. Okay. My name is Caio. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and I have a background in philosophy, law, and music, and I am a certificate student in critical philosophy, but I am currently finishing my 2 master's degrees, one in social history, in which I'm studying free jazz in the United States during 60s and 70s. And my other master degree is in philosophy, in which I'm studying the poetics of Martinican Aimé Césaire, most best known, I think, for his Cahiers d'un retour au pays natal. And studying Césaire, I came across a critique of Descartes. In fact, I think it's a most general critique of his idea of cogito, So I decided to take the seminar for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Carl.
Hello, I'm Carl, and well, in general, I guess I'm interested in the sort of autonomy we can aspire to on this planet and the foils that there are for it, for our aspirations. On this road, I guess I'm interested in the early history of the Enlightenment, or the history of the early Enlightenment also, or better. I've been quite occupied for the past several years, so it's I'm going to try to read a little bit more kind of widely for a while now. So hence I'm here to see what we all have to say about Descartes.
Thank you so much, Carl. Ivan.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I'm Ivan. I'm a certificate student at the New Center, and I have a background in theoretical linguistics. And I used to write a PhD on formal syntax, actually, but eventually I dropped out of it. And now I'm into new media art and new media theory, critical studies of AI and intelligence, stuff like this. And I am particularly interested by Descartes, by this figure of Descartes, because I see him as a ghost which sort of haunts today's European rationality and European science altogether. Because I used to work in the field which was very much structured by mechanical metaphors by Noam Chomsky. There is this book by Noam Chomsky which was called Cartesian Linguistics, and and so I'd like to sort of critically scrutinize this theory of humans as automata and things like this. So yeah.
Right. That's great. Thank you so much. Clary.
Oh, hi. You can hear me?
Yes.
I'm Clarice. I'm from Brazil. And I have some background in translation of philosophical texts about accelerationism, xenofeminism, and stuff like that. It's the first seminar I took at New Center, and I took this seminar because I'm very curious about your current work and your last seminars, and I'm very curious about how you use Descartes and how that experimentations interest me so much. And so
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Humbled. Mina.
And my background is in comparative literature and also physics. And it's been a while that I want to take your classes, and so this is basically my start. And I'm also curious and interested in the relationship between Descartes' thoughts and also philosophy of science and philosophy of mind. But this is also like an introduction for me to basically be in your classes and be your student. So
thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mina. Jordi.
Hello, Reza. Hello, everybody. I'm Jordi. I'm from Barcelona, although I live in Vienna. My background is in architecture and philosophy. I'm now doing a PhD on that considers, among other things, doubt and fatalism, or doubt and necessity. So that's why I would really like to go more in depth with Descartes' doubt. And also I have read Cyclonopedia and Intelligence and Spirit, so I really like them, although it was hard to go through, but I also enjoyed what I could understand. And I'm really interested to know more about how you think, how you speak, and which is your take on Descartes. So that's also a vector, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, no pressure. I mean, this is already it's going to be mostly a boring seminar. Well, hopefully. Levi?
Hello everyone, I'm Levi from the Philippines. My background is on sound and text. I'm taking interdisciplinary studies in New Center. I took the course because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this weird relationship between the irrational and the rational, especially since right now all things irrational are kind of sexy. So it would be interesting to hear your points on rationalism through Descartes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Gabriel?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yes.
I'm Gabriel Guarino. I'm from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, but I'm currently living in São Paulo. I am a martial artist and anthropologist. I'm working with a kind of a triangle, as Gabi said, on education, anthropology, and Chinese philosophy. I'm currently starting a postdoctoral research on anthropology of martial arts and the problems of creation and ontology on the Chinese practice in the Brazilian diaspora of Chinese people and masters. And I'm really interested in this topic of the seminar and to be talking with you all, especially because I have a strong background on Chinese philosophy, and sometimes Descartes appears as the sort of the boogeyman, the scarecrow of like the antipoda of the Chinese thought, and meanwhile Spinoza would be like the good guy who talks like some Chinese thinkers, especially those ones which I've been studying, which is like the Neo-Confucianism, Li Shui, which strongly resonates with my research on ethnography of Chinese martial arts. But I'm currently living as a professor and professor of martial arts, and very happy to get back and study and reading things, and talking to people about this deep problems.
Magnificent, extremely intriguing connections. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I somehow lost the order of who was next. My screen changed. Does anyone know who is the next? Was it Georgiana? Was it you? I think it was you.
No, it wasn't on my screen, but I can go, sure. So hi, I'm Georgiana. I am from Romania and currently I live in Berlin. And I am concluding my certificate studies with the new Center in Transdisciplinary Studies. And yeah, I enrolled in the seminar back in February because for some time now I started to have doubts and reservations against current popularized theories of embodiment, of mind-body dualism, who created that, trauma theory, and such, and the way my background is in literature and my medium. So I was interested in how psychiatry or current even psychotherapy borrows literary terms or takes for granted some axioms and truisms such as, Western philosophy, mind-body division, and we need to return to the body. And how that is done, for me...
Allah knows.
Sorry?
I said Allah knows how is that done.
Yeah, but I suspected that perhaps Descartes might have had some let's say redeeming thoughts, or maybe some ideas that weren't fully explored, or even if not, at least it's worth the chance to like revisit and like
yes
reconquer some lost grounds. And yeah, that
Magnificent,
would
yeah.
be it.
Yeah, well, you know,
And
I
happy to
think,
be back here.
yes, well, I mean, let's not get our hopes high. This is not going to be draw of desert too, but let's see. He might.
No, I hope not.
I hope
I'm,
not.
I'm here for really for reading Descartes, hopefully integrally and for the first time. So
Sure. Well, it might get to that point though. Well, don't complain that much. Flicks.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm at the elementary school where I work, so I'm sorry if you hear screaming in the background. My name's Felix. I'm in the critical philosophy program, and I'm really interested in mystical states of consciousness and kind of trying to give things like that a little bit more philosophical rigor, I guess. But I'm also an artist. I've been just autodidact with this stuff for a long time. And I think Descartes kind of someone I haven't thought about very much at all. But Meditations was actually, I think, the first piece of philosophy I ever read, and I took it from one of my stepbrothers or something, like forever ago. So I'm really curious to see what the class is going to be about.
What was your impression when you read it? Were you scared?
No, I think it's hard for me to remember. I think at that period of my life, I was reading a lot of stuff way too fast and not paying attention to it. So I don't think a lot of it really sunk in.
Okay. Excellent. Christian. Christian is, yeah.
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Christian. I'm from Australia. It's a little bit past midnight for me, so fellow East Hemisphere attendees will understand the struggle maybe. Basically brought to the seminar, I think, out of an interest in someone else mentioned before, this idea of, you know, humans as automata and Descartes' rationalism, particularly how that, well, particularly in light of, you know, Reza, your sort of rationalist turn and your writings in Intelligence and Spirit, which, you know, maybe by now some would say are a bit outmoded, perhaps, even though it wasn't published that long ago. And yeah, I think on a slightly more personal note, my philosophical studies at university started with Descartes, very much positioned as the founder of modern philosophy. But the treatment of him is somewhat superficial and doesn't really go into his, it didn't really go into his biography that much, or it wasn't until a lot later that we actually investigated how he was more relevant for ensuing philosophy. So hoping this seminar can shed some light on understudied aspects of Descartes' work and thought, and provide some fruitful new avenues to sort of put him in contact with the rest of the body of philosophy, I suppose.
Excellent, superb. Reza, you did yours, so let me see. Does anyone know who is the next one, or I've lost track of the.
I can maybe go. I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. Sure.
Hi, Reza. Hi, everyone. I'm Pedro. I'm from Brazil, but I'm living in Amsterdam now. And I'm currently working on an exhibition which will show an installation about asbestos and Dracula. So yeah, of course, that Descartes is very mystifying, but I think I'm interested in this negotiations between materials and the morality that they're subject to. And I think it often tracks back to humanist traditions, but also to the Enlightenment. And to be very honest, I'm very interested in your work as well. So I think that was the first thing that caught my attention. And I just read Cyclopedia. So yeah, I was very impressed by Cyclopedia. So I'm very curious also to see where you take us.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Next, does anyone know who that person might be? Oh, Megan, how are you?
Good, how are you? I can go.
Sure.
I'm Megan Buick. I'm a certificate student at the New Center. I studied philosophy and theology. I'm a musician. And Descartes was actually the window into the whole mess of Catholic theology that I ended up getting lost in. So it'll be interesting to read him again.
You haven't even seen Descartes and Islam. The rabbit hole. Is it Swati?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi Reza. I'm really glad to be here. I am an architect by training, and well, I read Descartes back in undergrad, like Cartesian geometry, etc. And recently, I've been interested in immateriality and how we've been measuring kind of different materialities through different measures of time. And I'm working on like this installation about those measurements that have that as architects or as contemporary artists or people have been involved in. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just interested and curious also about your background, and I've heard some of your lectures, and I'm just kind of excited to be here.
Absolutely. May I ask, where do you practice as an architect?
I'm from India. I'm based in New York. Yeah.
I see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Joseph, is it your turn?
Hello, I'm just auditing this course. I previously took your courses on humanism and cynicism a few years back.
Yes,
I've been
I remember.
paying attention to some of your courses. Recently listened to most of the Hume course. I think what you're doing with the history of philosophy is pretty interesting, and excited to see what you have to say about Descartes and this relation to an interrogation, dissection of methods. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Joseph, thank you so much. Thank you. Who's the next? Do we have anyone who hasn't talked? Does anyone know? Ravi, do you know?
To be honest, the order of panelists, in my view, has been different this whole time. So I haven't been able to follow it.
I think is there anyone who hasn't talked? Oh, by the way, Ravi, would you let John and MR in if they want to come?
Yeah, I've extended invites to all the people, to our attendees. I think maybe just some people don't want to be
excellent.
Panelists, which is fine.
Okay.
But also for those people, no pressure if you did want to join panelist side.
Excellent. So apparently everyone introduced themselves. So I think 10:51. Let's have like I don't know, 9 minutes, 10 minutes rest, just like and then I start this introduction. I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to able to go over everything that I prepared for today, but doesn't matter. We always run short on time. in these seminars. I will try to kind of like circumvent some of the topics. Anyway, let's go for some refreshment and come back. 10 minutes. Okay. Christian and all the other people of Desert Collective. Let's just remember that today, Lucas did not join us, left us helpless. We can shame him later on.
Inshallah, we shall. Maybe he's having love troubles.
Yes.
In which case, who can blame him?
No. What Gabriel was talking about with regard to the martial arts and Descartes, it's just like I'm still thinking about it. There might be something really good there. Militarization of Cartesian dualism.
People often say that the Chinese martial arts are the materialization of Chinese philosophy. So I guess that we could think about the Cartesian martial arts as a materialization of what you think.
That's a good point. Magnificent point.
Gabriel, I was curious if there's any specific styles or forms of martial arts that you practice that you're into at this point.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I realized that I introduced myself, but didn't say exactly what I'm affiliated with. I did a doctorate degree in Rio de Janeiro at PUC Rio, the Pontifical Catholic University, and then now I'm studying a research on São Paulo University, and then these 2 points, like Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, it's where I practice in Rio de Janeiro Kung Fu Eagle Claw for a lineage called from Li Lao, which is a Chinese master who lives in the United States. And now I'm practicing Tai Chi Chuan of the Tai Chi Chuan, as they say it sometimes in Brazil, of the Chen family here in São Paulo. And I do also teach queer self-defense, which is sort of only the self-defense aspect in a collective called Piranhas Team here in Brazil. So we teach self-defense for LGBT community and women mostly. So this is my martial arts background.
Magnificent. Gabriel, I should put you in touch with Sam Forsyth. You know Sam Forsyth, right? He's going to also teach at the New Center course. And he might be extremely interested in this sort of stuff because he's also a champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I'm glad to be in touch. I'm glad to be in touch.
I've also been practicing martial arts for a while, and the person who's sort of been mentoring me most recently, he doesn't teach me this stuff, but he actually learned Brazilian Portuguese and lived in Brazil for a while, specifically to study with a mestre of Capoeira Angola, which from what I've heard is pretty hard to get a hold of, but I was just curious for that reason.
Marcus Aurelius, Aaron. I mean, Marcus Aurelius. There's another one. Recently I read. Can't remember. So 1 more minute and then we start.
Yeah, whenever you're ready. I'll also just put my my New Center email in the chat. If anyone wants to reach me for any reason, just like take it down, send an email, or email the organizer. New Center email will work too. They'll forward it to me probably.
Excellent. So.
Also on the warrior philosophers thing, I don't know if this really counts, but I was raised Sikh, like from the Punjabi Sikh tradition, and there's definitely a lot of warrior scholars in that sort of.
Yes, I have heard about this. Yes, good point. Okay, So I'm going to start with reading two interesting quotes. One is from this book. It's a magnificent book if you can find it. Unfortunately, there is no PDF of it. It's called Light and Enlightenment. It's called A Study of Cambridge Platonists and the Dutch Arminians by Rosalie L. Colie. It's Cambridge University Press. It's old. I think it's in 50s. Yeah, it's a gem of a book, magnificent. Particularly, it goes, from Descartes, Hobbes, Spinoza. Yeah, generally great book. So first a quote from this, and then a quote from First Meditation by the first two paragraphs, which are like. That's why I said, what was your impression? Did you get scared? Because I think that these two passages are quite scary. So, by the end of the century, the Cartesian question was as good as settled, though Descartes' name remained a useful bogey in orthodox criticism of the new science and the new philosophy. As a set of unconscious assumptions integrated into the various modes of men's lives, Cartesianism did not and could not die. Of course, its logical method was axiomatic for philosophic minds and its stylistic purification a literary habit. In another sense, the philosophical fires Cartesianism had kindled earlier in the century never entirely burnt out and often jumped into new territory, starting new blazes, burning, some merrily, some fiercely, over the intellectual landscape. One such fire that owed much to Cartesian origin was the Hobbist, reference to Hobbes, was the Hobbist conflagration. The Cambridge Platonists so bravely fought. Another was the great blaze of Spinozism. First meditation. Of those things that may be called into doubt. It is some years now since I realized how many false opinions I had accepted as true from childhood onwards, and that whatever I had since built on such shaky foundations could only be highly doubtful. Hence, I saw that at some stage in my life, the whole structure would have to be utterly demolished, and that I should have to begin again from the bottom up if I wish to construct something lasting and unshakable in the sciences. But this seemed to be a massive task. And so I postponed it until I had reached the age when one is fit, as one will ever be, to master the various disciplines. Hence, I have delayed so long that now I should be at fault if I used up in deliberating the time that is left for acting. The moment has come. And so today, I have discharged my mind from all its cares and have carved out a space of untroubled leisure. I have withdrawn into seclusion and shall at last be able to devote myself seriously and without encumbrance to the task of destroying all my former opinions. To this end, however, it will not be necessary to prove them all false, a thing I should perhaps never be able to achieve. But since reason already persuades me that I should no less scrupulously withhold my assent from what is not fully certain and indubitable than from what is blatantly false, then in order to reject them all, it will be sufficient to find some reason for doubting each one. Nor Shall I therefore have to go through them each individually, which would be an endless task? But since once the foundations are undermined, the building will collapse of its own accord. I shall straightway attack the very principles that form the basis of all my former beliefs. So, I mean, obviously, there is something quite powerful, mightily philosophical, emotional, existential in these first two passages of Descartes. There is a reason that it's called Cartesian Conflagration, you know, that particularly has how Colie has been calling it. Descartes has given up on philosophizing so much that he wants to essentially commit an act of complete self-sabotage as a philosopher, right? And the only way that he can do it is by setting his house on fire while he's in it, right? Except that this I that Descartes is talking about is not just Descartes' own biography. This is a recipe, an infernal recipe for philosophical revolution. That every individual, as Descartes asked, that every human being must at least once engage with such activity, setting its own house on fire, right? Then see what happens. Well, just like, you know, the Great Fire of London, precisely because all the thatched roofs are connected, fire spreads, completely lays waste to London. And that's exactly what Descartes wanted to do. This I here is the crypt. This I, when he says, I want to do this today. No, this I is that exactly that cogito ergo sum. The cogito. I think. Therefore I am. Therefore I exist. So, in a moment, in a philosophical history, right? A philosopher actually says something about themselves, but basically it is at the same time about themselves as individual philosophers, but it is essentially about philosophy, right? And other philosophers. And not just philosophy and philosophers. Essentially, the whole meaning of how philosophy actually is an enterprise about human beings, right? And their place in the world. So from this perspective, precisely because it's the first one, this is also most probably the most cryptic document that we have about the rise of modern philosophy. Not just modern philosophy, I want to say. I think literally the escalation of the philosophical project, philosophy itself, whose missions, as I have always said, quite obscure. We might have a certain sort of sense how these missions or this philosophy as an engine are driving us towards certain sort of ends, certain sort of destinies or goals, but nevertheless, they're quite obscure, as essentially it's a labor of philosophy to find out. When I'm saying that philosophy is that, and comes back to this whole idea that from the Cartesian perspective, science cannot do away with philosophy. Literally, if science tries to break from philosophy in this sense of essentially stripping back all supposed certainties and reach to the ground for certainty, which through the radical doubt and the grounds for certainty, which I'm going to talk about, is quite specific. One is the existence of God, which is quite heavily strong here and for good reasons. If you try to circumvent or resist this sort of move, which is a philosophical move escalated by Descartes, science just starts to get broken, simple as that. And we now see it, science is broken. I mean, we don't need to joke about this. We don't need to be either throw tantrums or be whining about it or think that this is something that we shouldn't talk about this. No, science is totally broken because it has thought that it can actually eject itself out of this gesture of philosophy. So, or find some sort of pseudo solutions for it, or dissolving the problem. Worse, instead of solving the problem, dissolving it totally. So, before I start, does anyone want to have any sort of remark or anything, just like a amusing comment or anything?
I was just wondering, it's not really elaborate, but I remember when you did the seminar on Husserl, we also talked a lot about Descartes' influence in Husserl's work, right?
Yes, yes.
I'm just now thinking how this goes together with the fact that Husserl criticized the turn that modern science took so much. But maybe that goes a bit too far away now.
No, absolutely. Literally, Husserl most probably discovered what actually Descartes was warning us about all along. Yeah. And really what Descartes actually warning us is also what Plato had warned us. Right? That's actually quite very strange, Plato warns this, just Descartes makes sure that the Platonic message is being received because it has been fundamentally corrupted by Aristotelian scholasticism. That you can't even see the problem. There is nothing there, right? Philosophy has completely dilapidated. So he tries to rescue this moment, escalate it to certain sort of fiery task, and then unleash it, which is the project of enlightenment. And then Husserl also discovers this, and then sees that, oh my God, yeah, this is the sort of crisis. And it's just precisely because science has become moving against the project of enlightenment itself, which is the project of philosophy. Any more?
I have sorry, quick question about, so you saying that to do away with the Cartesian revolution is to ruin the project of science, or science collapses in some sense.
No, absolutely not. No. Essentially, Descartes wants to make sure that science does this to itself, or at least scientists, right, do it to themselves. To understand, look, what is actually at stake here, right? And then also understand the profound relations between philosophy and science, without which science then gets broken. And then it becomes, to an extent, pathological.
Right. So could you say a little bit more about the pathological science and Aristotelian scholasticism, and what do you see as the relationship there?
I don't think that there is exactly a clear-cut relationship. Essentially, Aristotelianism, right, it starts to think about physics of things, right, in a very specific sort of way, and also mathematics. And then, of course, these have consequences for natural sciences and stuff, right? Even proto-natural sciences of the Middle Ages. And so Descartes sees that, this whole idea that Aristotle tries to, in a specific sort of way, transform philosophy into something as banal as natural sciences. This is yeah. So and so this sort of natural sciences are things that, look, we have purged all the philosophical, my apologies to say, bullshit, and now we have proper natural science. This is the best one, and we are never going back to philosophy. This is exactly the Aristotelian gesture, right? The Aristotelian gesture that Descartes wants to undo. Precisely because Descartes sees that if this natural science has deludedly thinks that it has purged all the philosophical, dirt and unnecessary particles, this natural science is independent and should be venerated as a new philosophy, as the only thing through which we can talk about ourselves. Just like modern science, the only thing in this pathological sense, the only way that ultimately we can talk about ourselves. In fact, everything, this is just the typical Salesian sort of stuff, that ultimately the manifest image will be replaced by the scientific image, right? That's the gesture that is fundamentally anti-philosophical, I would say. And you see it now happening, and of course this goes hand in hand with other sort of stuff too. The conspiracy is really out there, because this sort of moves toward this sort of pathological understanding of science goes hand in hand with new atheism stuff, right? And that's, Descartes also predicted this. And then this new atheism also goes hand in hand with some sort of shady political, scientific, cultural sort of enterprises.
Reza, I would like to ask you that the classical word for what we call science now was natural philosophy, I think. And
Yeah.
when and how we transition from calling it natural philosophy to science, how do you think that figures into what you're talking about?
Don't know. I need to think about this. Do you have any answer to that yourself? Tentative even.
I think when we frame it as a natural philosophy,
Mhm.
it becomes imminent. It becomes imminent to that idea that we are as subjects engage part of it as engage as we are engaging with it. So it cannot be taken as separate from what we are doing with it. So but when we go from calling it natural philosophy to science, it becomes something transcendental that we are accessing, which from where the human subjectivity is removed. And I think that's where, and then after that, when all of these disciplines become departments in a university, where natural sciences becomes a separate science department, and philosophy becomes part of arts and humanities. And in a way, there is an insulation between that communication, which over generations and over centuries has strengthened. And that insulation, I think, and the way those languages have diverged, and the way the subjectivity has been severed off, that has led to a great
Yes,
I,
yes.
I think you see what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Good point. No, no, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just digesting. Anyone? If not, I will start. So Descartes says that, that everyone must exercise the special methods of radical doubt at least once. So now I want to ask all of you here today in this seminar, each one of you. Of course, this is a private question. So again, my apologies for even raising this question to you. What was the last time that you truly meditated, right? As philosophers and intellectuals, as artists and architects, nevertheless, people who are engaged with thinking, right? When was the last time that you truly meditated? And then, in addition to that question, that I want to actually ask you, and can just like go with 3 or 4 people. In addition to that question, I also want to ask you, what did you find out after that, after truly meditating? And what did you reach actually? So this is the question. I mean, to answer this question, all I need to, saying that, have you actually truly meditated, right? As intellectuals, philosophers, people who are just genuinely engaged with thinking, saying yes and no, then say what exactly happened as the result. And then after a few of you say, and then I want to ask a general question from everyone, but also a question from which we are going to start the seminar in true spirit. Who is a meditator, actually? Who is a meditator? So does anyone want to answer to those private questions?
Yeah. in terms of the meditation, if we're not thinking about the intellectual thinking or in terms of thinking,
no, I truly mean meditation, whatever you want to think.
Oh yeah,
this.
yeah.
Any sort of meditation, I would say,
Okay.
any sort of meditation is allowed.
Yeah.
We are not we are going to use this word from now unequivocally.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Or equivocally, depending on how you look at it.
Okay. Recently, I've been working on a series of paintings. Basically, they are abstract paintings, and when I start the work, the process that happens is that I stop thinking, and it's like I'm melting into the work, and after a few hours, I woke up, and I wake up and see, okay, something's done, and I step back and look at it as I would say a conscious mind, and to see what happened, and this process is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and after few works and few, I would say, days pass to the works, I see, okay, it's like a peeling off my skin and look through or look within. And it's like that I'm turning off my conscious mind and dive into my unconscious mind and then go back and look at it. And it's been pretty amazing process to me, because it's like a discovering new potentials, or discovering actually what was in there, what was I'm carrying from the past, and what was my main questions that been unforgotten and been buried through the daily activities or engagements, and or basically distractions.
Kind of like you know, Platonic recall function.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Unforgetting.
Yeah, something like that. And it's been I'm not calling it amazing, but it's been like something new and recent discovery.
Sure.
Yeah, that was my experience.
You're headed toward identity crisis. I can see it.
Oh yeah.
In your horizon, it's coming for you.
Yeah.
Christian.
So I know Matthew said in the chat that, you know, Descartes' sense of meditation, at least on the, you know, the received interpretation, is very different.
Yeah, the received interpretation.
Yeah, it's very different to what most people in the world would, at least in the West, would associate meditation with, which is sort of, you know, Buddhist style, deep contemplation or mantra recitation or something like that. The last time I meditated was a few days ago, 15 minutes, and more in that latter sense, right? Closer to what many people today would call like mindfulness meditation. But I've been lax in my practice. Earlier in my life, I meditated a lot more frequently and a lot more deeply. And so for me, it was something that had elements of, you know, this sort of Vipassana tradition, breath meditation, Zen meditation, deep insight, and sort of attaining a heightened sense of focus and introspection. And so when I used to meditate for a lot longer, up to sort of 40 minutes at a time, that would be a sort of a process of reflection and introspection that, although it started off as this sort of aesthetic practice, I think gradually moved me more towards this sort of Cartesian place of cogitation and thought and philosophizing, really. And I found that I think most of my best thoughts or best work was done after that sort of deep reflection, meditation, and introspection.
So it's a kind of like the so, you know, when I ask, you know, what did you reach You know, what did you find out? So you are saying kind of like a depth, and kind of like the idea of a depth, catabasis.
I would even say it's almost like a flow state, but for the internal world, you know. When thoughts just flow and come together, and I see anyways, sort of connections made with a certain sense of clarity.
Yes,
you can catch yourself before falling into sort of fallacious patterns of reasoning and things like that.
Right.
I don't know. We could speculate as to the reason
but
why.
Nevertheless, a certain sort of it allows for the enablement of new thoughts, fundamentally new thoughts that maybe otherwise would be impossible to attain.
Or very rare to attain. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And plus, you have already gone through your identity crisis with the last seminar, so you don't count anymore.
I don't need a second one.
you don't need to do another meditation anytime soon. So, Linka.
I'm very excited about this topic. I meditated last night, actually, for the first time in a really long time. And I used to have a very intrinsic practice, and I would meditate for hours each day a few years ago. And I did it again last night. And what I'm interested, what happens usually is that there is space that arises. There's a gap between that which is observed and that which is observing. And I think this is what interests me the most, this brink, or maybe what Christian called this flow. I see it as a space between what is being meditated on, or thought forms, patterns, concepts, and that which is watching, observing, or meditating. And I think that this space then kind of becomes very, very interesting. And to the question, who is the meditator? I would say that it would be this space in between, because then I would think about what would one meditate on, and what one would meditate basically on concepts, which are texts, which are images, or kind of to push on Flusser's theoretization of the production of images. You could think of concepts as meta text, for example, or meta codes, images. And what I find really interesting, for example, is how this really relates to so much of cognitive theory today, but also, for example, to Lacan's mirror stage, and for example, Susan Buck-Morss writing on Benjamin and anesthetization and aesthetics and so on. But yeah, I think this is kind of something that I've been interested. So
yeah, not only, I mean, yeah, of course, I mean, theoretically, philosophically, from our perspective of, you know, people who are engaging with theory also, of course, with Lacan and, you know, with a lot, but also, I mean, think about it, is actually encompass religious phenomena, ritualistic phenomena, like literally the entirety of what we actually call human culture. Everything. Absolutely. And then the role of the space, yes, as that sort of, you know, kind of a depth in which you can both, into meditation, whatever, you both strip back the question of Husserl's Rückfrage, you know, questioning back, but also catabasis in Greek mythology, you know, descent of Odysseus, and also at the same time is a form of anabasis, coming up, rising up, but now more enabled, right? Which you can see it in, again, so many other sort of expressions of this non-mythological in cognitive science, and, you know, in religion, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So absolutely.
Maybe I'd give you a second answer also quite quickly, because I think that you could find the meditator in two different spaces. So this first space, which I was talking about now, this gap, or this space of observation, or that which would be a priori to that which is meditated. That would be my first answer. And I thought about it shortly now, and I think there is an interesting second answer if one would think about the question in terms of logic, or in terms of what could be formed via information, or kind of like a Rückkopplung, like to come back on the problem from the other side. And I thought, for example, about mediation then, and about the production and the transmission of information. And I thought to myself that, for example, like what Adorno also usually theorized with, for example, his meditations on Wagner's music, or yeah, just generally, yeah, coming back to Flüsse, for example, there is also this kind of tendency to say that the only way to produce new information is to reveal the logic of its own production within itself. And I think this is also a very interesting point to think about.
Yeah, magnificent. I mean, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, the seminar, but you talked about the information, you know, there is actually a computational, from perspective of theoretical computer science, there is a computational aspect to this. Except that it is not really computation in the classical church Turing thesis, but of course compatible with it. But yes, there is a computational property in meditation, which is highly, highly unusual. And it is actually considered to be, if we want to formulate it computationally, that would be, essentially one of the enigmas of computation, theoretical computer science, topics such as concurrency computation, asynchronic processing, true spaces. In fact, there are computer scientists who have pointed out to the origin of some of these stuff, particularly coming from only one person, from Descartes himself. I will share some of these as we move forward. Yes, absolutely. Gabriel.
That's a very personal question, because I kept thought that the last time I meditate in this more philosophical sense, about like 2 years ago, when I was finishing my thesis and I got some real problems about the data that I was analyzing. And then you have this problem on ethnography, which is like a field work that exceeds what you going to write about it. So you have to, some problems, they don't have a solution by itself. And then this meditation was like to stop to think and see how the data would find its own ways to become some writing. So meditation is something really, really deep related to writing. And a professor of mine would used to say that it really helps if you are smoking. I don't know. I think he guessed that it has something, some bodily experience on smoking that allows you to keep the ideas like going. But on the other hand, I meditate every day on the martial art practice of Tai Chi, and we do a stand meditation. It's like a meditation where you do with the hand like this, and in some sort of squat position, which is physically very intense, because you're sort of squatting, and then physically your legs start to burn. But as in the Zen tradition, the idea is that you have to not stop thinking, because somehow they say that it's impossible, but to let the flow of thinking do not interrupt your practice, or not to engage in any internal dialogue. There is an expression that you kept the current of the sounds of the world going. So somehow, I mean, I feel like in both
you have to let yourself fall into the flow. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And try not to engage in a conversation with yourself or with the ideas that are coming up to
yes,
you.
yes.
But I guess that there's a problem about that, because underneath the idea is that by doing so, you have to have a capacity to exceed yourself and understand that the ideas that you are popping up in your head, they are not yours. Like it's just like some waving that everything around has. So a meditation as a way to exceed yourself, but also to somehow come back, but in the more I don't know,
elevated level.
Mystical.
Yeah, elevated level. Yes, elevated.
Yeah,
level.
in a more elevated level, but
elevated level. Yeah.
Like when you're doing to meditate as this spiritual practice and martial art, you want to come back, but you realize that the ego, the self, is not that important. But when I'm in the intellectual entrepreneur, I think that I have to exceed myself, come back, but the ego is very important because he's the one who's writing. So I feel like you have to come back to the sense of authorship and to be able to express yourself by an entity, discrete entity.
Absolutely discrete entity. Yes, absolutely. That's the whole thing about Descartes. Like literally, you don't know, is it a robot talking about? Is it Descartes or is he actually everyone who's saying it? This is the whole cryptic thing about Descartes. This I that it is, he has to just, as a matter of convention, he has to use I here, but also deeply, right? And then hence you really don't know what it is. Is ego talking to himself, like it's biographical, the projection of ego onto itself, or is it a robot, an angel in the machine, or is it I as the regular I, the self-conscious agent, right? And yes, also coming back, I mean, one of the things that also needs to be pointed out with what Gabriel talked about in martial arts, but also, in praying, religious praying or any sort of meditation in that sort of sense. It is quite famous, and Descartes completely understands this, that it is through the process of meditation that human becomes extremely vulnerable. I mean, you can see it like when a monk meditates, that's a moment that someone can attack him, right? Or when people usually pray, that's where basically, when they want to assassinate someone, they assassinate, because these are the moments of pure vulnerability, but also philosophical vulnerability for Descartes. But literally, he mean it vulnerability for human beings. There's a moment that you're prone to, things are going on internally and externally. Swati?
Hi, thanks so much for sharing, everybody, all your thoughts on meditation. And I feel vulnerable right now sharing it with everyone as well. But last year, it was one of the most fascinating years. So I've been working in New York, and of course, it's like a very concretized way of working as an architect here. And I was away from nature because of the pandemic, etc. So last year I took a sabbatical and went to like a forest in India, and just being so close to nature, and also these conversations about interpretations of nature and philosophy, etc. It's fascinating because what happened, at least to me, is that being close to nature, I started having kind of a very disciplined way of going to like a state of nothingness, like a state of not having too much going on in my head. And as a result of that, started seeing these thought forms in while I was in an unconscious state or while I was meditating, and just kind of the beauty of those thought forms just kind of fascinated me on so many levels, that I started looking for those thought images in nature and in different materials around me. And in that search, in that inquiry, I started looking at the geometries that exist in nature and kind of drawing from that and kind of embodying that, and not embodying
Right.
how they look aesthetically, but also the qualities, like, qualities of silence, qualities of light, qualities of just the physics of the natural world, etc. And kind of drawing from that how the world is constructed, and not just looking at it from a how, but also from the why point of view.
Sure. Of course. I mean, yes, magnificent. I mean, everyone has talked about this. There are some surprising commonalities. Doesn't matter how you meditate, as so long as you meditate, there is a commonality here. There are certain sort of commonalities that are quite spooky, because these commonalities of such caliber do not actually specifically for no reason happen, right? And Descartes' philosophy essentially tries to philosophically talks about these commonalities, right? What happens throughout meditation and what can be achieved through meditation. And what would be the consequence of this sort of philosophical meditation? If we philosophically try to interpret it, everyone is allowed to interpret it by way of a different form, right? And I want to say that, in fact, all of them, in that sense, are deeply philosophical. It doesn't matter whether it's religious, spiritual, martial, so on and so forth. It's philosophical. Precisely because it's philosophical, it's also extremely dangerous. One of the things that Gabriel was talking about, this kind of like and also Swati also talked about it with regard to geometry. There's a certain sort of a tendency in meditation, quite unexplained, that things start to become discrete, like being analyzed, right? Become discrete, as for example, either data, or in Descartes, certain sort of axioms with full certainty, without which you cannot do anything, right? Or geometrical shapes. Again, Descartes has been talked about this sort of stuff as the ground, as those sort of things. The triangle, which we come back to it, right? That he sees triangle, and and it is a proof that atheists are stupid. It's quite awe-inspiring. I mean, when we look at it collectively, and then situating Descartes at the middle of this, and how Descartes sees it. And of course, Descartes, throughout the whole meditation, tries to Descartes is a very sly sort of philosopher. And if you have read his letters, which I completely, wholeheartedly recommend you to read his letters. He's a man of letters. Each of these letters, and particularly the one that you read with Elizabeth of Bohemia, but also with Pierre Gassendi and Mencion, they are just like gems. And he always has this sort of a slide that, look, I know what is going to be the consequence and how they are going to respond, but nevertheless, I'm going to do this precisely because I know how they are going to respond. So Descartes has this sort of a sly, sneaky, cunning figure of philosophy, right? And that's why in the abstract, in the introduction to the seminar, the description, I called him Ratus Descartes. Descartes the rat. Precisely, Descartes goes into meditation, I can't remember which meditation it is. And it says, okay, guys, kids, I have done this for you. Like literally, I had this identity crisis. I meditated fully and I reached these. And this is it. But for that, I had to essentially put an end to my philosophy, so I can become a novice philosopher, a meditator, right? And I did it. It's a very difficult task. I advise you to not do it at home, at your own rate. He says, it literally says that, you know, you don't need to go to this length of meditation, precisely because you are going to be naughty as philosophers and you are going to do it yourself, right? So this is his way of, you know, encouraging you to do it and not to trust him, right? Josie.
Yeah, a while ago, I was going to ask you, how does the Cartesian philosophy bridge the gap between doubt and faith? Because we cannot discard faith. And then I didn't, and then after listening,
It literally solidified it forever, philosophically.
I'm sorry for the background noise, but to continue, I think the bridge between the doubt and faith can be referred to as that which meditation is, and
Absolutely.
I've been thinking that meditation can also be understood as a kind of pruning and consolidation process, where when the soul prunes and consolidates itself, like an internal resonance, where it derives some eigen values or eigen forms, or something which remains after the pruning, and then it can have faith. It is not just a direct naive image of the divine intellect, I guess.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, sorry, I'm just like, Ravi, would you be able to let Lucas in? I don't know when Lucas is in the panel, attendees. And any person who wants to come in. Yes, Josie, yes, absolutely. We are going to head toward that direction, right? We are going to talk about this sort of stuff. And why is that both Christians of the time, but also the atheists of the time, hated Descartes for this? Because Descartes didn't want to theology have this sort of insight, right? Saying that, oh, I am like, you know, I own this insight of this faith and, you know, essentially other sort of stuff that you mentioned, and that meditate, for someone to be meditator, it needs to be a theologian or someone, a pope or someone, some cleric or something, right? Whereas the atheists didn't want that because they wanted to get rid of philosophy in a sense, right? With Hobbesians, or but even Hobbes was Christian, right? But I mean, down the line, but nevertheless, it started from that. So they all wanted to attack Descartes precisely because he was up to this. He was really up to no good. He wanted to philosophically consolidate this bridge and show that there is no bridge, in fact. That the bridge is the meditation, the philosophical meditation, right? And to do that, he wanted to liberate. It was an emancipatory movement, you know, with highly political implications. And they completely knew it, and that's why he became a persona non grata in Europe, right? They conspired against him to dampen the emancipatory consequences of him essentially looking at this bridge and truly philosophically infect everyone with this question of faith and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. My apologies. Give me 2 minutes. I will be back, and then I will move forward. My apologies. My sincere apologies. Okay. Yes, and of course, when I was talking about identity crisis, it wasn't a joke, really, I meant it. And then, what Josie talked about with the connection with faith, but also, the philosophical consequence that is going on here of this meditation. And that's why Descartes encourages that at least for one time, try to do as best as you can. Engage with such a process, right? Known as meditation, philosophically described, which I think that is quite astonishing that philosophy described it truly in its emancipatory weight and implication first. He encourages you to do this precisely because he knows that if you engage with such a process, you will go through a certain sort of identity crisis. That identity crisis is literally a gateway to liberation of the human itself. Right? So, Lucas, do you have anything to say? I mean,
not right now, no.
Okay, good. Okay. So first, one of the things that Descartes wants to say, as I said, that the meditator can be everyone and anyone, right? This is already put us in this whole idea that it can be anyone, literally anyone. Put us into this direction that he defines it in terms of its emancipatory potentials, right? The fact that it can be everyone and anyone, it's emancipatory, right? And given its consequences, it's not as if Descartes wants to say that, oh no, for example, only philosophers or only this kind of people, only this sort of people can practice meditation. No, anyone can be a meditator. And of course, what happens, as we are going to talk about, through this process of meditation, essentially, Descartes think about humans as what sort of meditators we are, angels in machines. But what sort of angels in machines, you might ask? Angels with passions in machines. Right? Of course, I will talk about this whole idea of angelism that has been going around in scholastic philosophy, but Descartes wants to revive it and shed its theological baggage. It has been around since Thomas Aquinas and other sorts of people, but it's just Descartes wants to make sure that this angelism, this no-angelism, is not shackled by this, organon of philosophical corruption called scholasticism, right? And all of its, what you might call to be religious, economic, scientific, political, philosophical, historical baggages. right? So human, the meditator, is an angel in a machine, a special form of what today we might call a computer, a special form of a computer. Now, this thesis has created a huge outcry and intellectual slanders, sad confusions, often born, careless engagements with the sacred program we call philosophy. In particular, the legacy of Descartes' philosophy and Descartes himself. And of course, the whole of the project of enlightenment. So that we now have pathetic creatures who call themselves the heirs or harbingers of the true enlightenment in our time, either in the garb of new atheism, Dawkins, Harris, so on and so forth, or scientists of a broken conception of science, who inanely and vainly, not out of complete, confusion and unscientific arrogance, which, now plagues a good deal of Western scientists or science in general, but also the complexity of science under, neoliberal capitalism, with tech corporates and so on and so forth. So this sort of scientists, of this sort of broken science, of course, openly, boldly, no longer out of fear of being, called, names of a charlatan, says, to people, his complete disdain for philosophy, and by extension, of course, science. These scientists go, show their fundamental disdain publicly without any sort of reservations anymore, because they have been emboldened by the broken science to go publicly say that, philosophy is a useless thing. We have to completely defund it. We have to make sure that it gets purged in our time. But then precisely because of that, they are also the most anti-scientific sort of scientists, right? I mean, an archetypal example would be, Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? So I want to, maybe I shouldn't actually talk about the angelism today, but rather start to, just generally talk about, the first meditation, the procedure of meditation, the philosophical history behind it, the motivations, and move it toward, the question of who is the meditator, and justifying that the meditator, as Descartes does, that meditator can be anyone and should be everyone. And then coming back to the topic of angelism, right? After we have a good grasp of, specifically Descartes is talking about angels. We are not talking about anything. We are talking about angels. It's not metaphor for Descartes. You might think so, but no, Descartes actually mean it. It's angels. And there are good reasons for this. Precisely because at the end of the process of meditation, once everything has been thrown away, there are few things that remain indubitable and with complete certainty. Right? And for Descartes, of course, the first one is really the existence of God. Right? So he really means it when he says that these are angels in machines. But what sort of angels? Angels with passions. And that passion is, going to be our last couple of seminar sessions. What is exactly passion here, and how passion literally accounts for that sort of computations of a specific kinds that go into body and the mind. Hence, I'm talking about computation again, because I want to move, just like theoretical computer science, but now philosophically, from the well-worn received view of Descartes as a proponent of substance dualism or dualism towards Descartes as a proponent of duality. Duality is a concept in computer science. There is a saying in theoretical computer science, but also in mathematics, that dualities are everywhere. Dualities are everywhere. We have it in philosophy as well. Phenomena, noumena, these are not dualisms, they are dualities. And then in mathematics, we have dualities of sheaves, dualities of numbers, and other, in theoretical computer science, we have other sorts of dualities. We have also logical dualities. Duality is a fundamental aspect of computation, and hence reality itself. Doesn't matter what sort of class of computation, what sort of plane of computation we are talking about, physical computation or cognitive computation or deductive computation. Any thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions before I start? Someone said something here. 1 second. Yes, well, that question in the chat box is rather an interesting question, particularly the last last question. And how do you negotiate between the idea of meditator and that of its contrary, namely prophet and imam? No, actually, meditator is a special form, imam is a special form of meditator, I would say. But I think that this is, let me just write it down so I don't forget it. I'm not going to forget it because we are going to talk about this. Yes, and with regard to the Are they all, so to speak, the universalities of the word or world? Yeah, there are absolutely universalities. Yes, yes, absolutely, yes. And precisely, you see, is Descartes essentially trying to unlock what Plato had initiated, at least in philosophy. Unlock that sort of moment or that gate where basically access to these universalities coincides with potential emancipatory consequences, right? Not only in philosophy, not only in science, but also in society writ large. And this is, of course, something that Plato had done that, right? Except that Descartes wants to underline the process, underline the consequences, give it a kind of what you might call to be, contextualize it based on his own time, because we philosophers have to reinvent these sort of stuff, even though we are repeating them sometimes. We have to reinvent them for our own time, right? And that's exactly what Descartes wants to do. Reinvent that gesture of philosophy, going back to Plato, for the sake of his own time. What is the time? This is end of a scholasticism, the peak power of Aristotelianism. And everything is totally in shambles. At societal level, at the level of theology, at the level of natural sciences. So yeah, Descartes in that sense is truly a revolutionary. In fact, Descartes is an imam, literally. Yes, please, Clarice.
Oh, okay. We're talking about the angels and the machines. I was thinking it's not fully elaborated, but if can these angels with passions be demons or things like that, or no?
Would you be able to repeat the last question? My apologies.
Oh, okay. Angels with passions can be demons or
demons, yes.
Yeah, is this the question?
Yes. Demons, well, you see, they're more like daemons, right? But daemons, depending on how you approach them, it can be either angel or a demon, right? And essentially, Descartes, being a rationalist, want them to be angels.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how his approach to passions is about, really, as opposed to Stoics, as opposed to Christians, as opposed to natural philosophers of his own time or Aristotelianists, right? He knows that. He knows absolutely, yes, it can be a demon, but he wants it to be angel because he wants to give us a certain sort of rational attitude toward passions that render humans angels rather than demons.
What differentiates the demon for the angel was the
demon is
rationalism.
He doesn't call it irrational. He has a rational approach to it in a sense that he believes in intrinsic goodness of all passions. And there are, the six main passions. What was it? Wonder, love, joy, sadness, anger, right? He believes in the intrinsic goodness of all these six passions. And every other passion is a mixture of these passions, all of them.
Makes sense.
Yes, and then he wants to say that when that essentially it is mind that is being, that the worst sort of stuff that can happen to this angel, to this mind, would be the stuff that would be the body, right? But body doesn't really affect the mind other than by passions, because passions mobilize body, bridge it to the mind, right? And precisely because of this, passions need to be always there, taken care of, but we should avoid their excess. Essentially, he wants to tell us that majority of our emotions are running suboptimally. And we should come with a certain form of optimization of our emotions, our passions. Any other?
Yeah, I was gonna comment, you got to this near the end of the comment that you just made about how the soul mobilizes the body with passions. And I think that that's kind of in the reading, in his interaction with Princess Elizabeth, she's unhappy with all of his answers. And then there's that final letter where we don't see a response in the text, but he does seem to try this other tactic of explaining how the soul and body interact. And it's exactly what you said. It's this idea that the soul, it kind of like projects these images or desires almost like a lure for the body to follow. So they're not.
And it's quite very
necessarily
interesting that,
directly.
like, literally, he's like, just imagine that this is like a philosopher. And he says that, look, people are saying that, look, where did you get all of this from? All of this stuff. Say, well, I just got it from philosophy. Look, I did my meditation. Everything I say from now on is absolutely real. You should take it seriously or else die. One of the things that he really predicts is an idea of what these days are talking about, cognitive science, neuroscience, neurocognitive science, because he actually says a soul cannot need a kind of like a prosthesis. And this prosthesis is essentially what we call a spirit. By that, he means animal spirit, what we call today nervous system, right? He's even going to that direction. He's predicting everything that needs to be there, right? For this machine for this angel in machine work. For the human to be human. For human to be a faithful human, and for a human to be a revolutionary faithful human, an emancipatory one. Emancipatory in a not just for our social extant humans, what we are here and now, but literally understanding how we can actually make other things human, right? Making these sorts of things, ghosts in machines.
But I'm just wondering, isn't it really ironic then if you think about Derrida, for example, in The Animal That Therefore I Am, that I guess what you're trying to say is that there's some sort of emancipatory potential that maybe was supposed to show how important the physical world is and to show how important the body is, right? But
yes.
Actually, there seemed to be some sort of evaluation later on in which everything that is not inhabited by a soul is devalued, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I mean, this is a kind of like, as I mentioned, that this is like, this kind of like a really kind of like, they hated Descartes so much that they didn't want to refute Descartes, but they wanted to water him down. They wanted to water Descartes down so it doesn't become dangerous, but rather the source of the problem itself, which is not. The source of problem were them, not Descartes. I mean, that was the whole conspiracy against Descartes. So Descartes, produces in the Meditations on First Philosophy in Meditations on First Philosophy is nothing short of astonishing. For discovering what we can say fundamental principles of philosophy, he puts forward the first thing that he does, the dream argument. Of course, there are 4 arguments, but for now, I'm just for the sake of introduction, reduce them to 2 arguments. One, the dream argument, and the other one is the God argument, as reasons for doubt, right? And then he vows to suspend judgment about everything to which those radical skeptical considerations apply. Now, of course, it would be hard to imagine a present-day investigation of basic philosophical principles beginning in this way. But that's precisely because philosophy is also broken, as we know it. Thanks to the ultimate, essentially the contribution of Aristotelianism to civilization. Make philosophy academic, make it as boring as possible, so no one touch it other than some freaks. Right? So, but of course, in philosophy, you always see rogue agents, even in present days, who are, always dissatisfied with all of the available ways of trying to rescue some sort of knowledge, from academic philosophy, from science, so on and so forth. And then they go follow Descartes. But also there are other sort of philosophers who are also feel completely unsatisfied with the method of doubt, with the radical method of doubt, with the meditation, that meditation does not actually give us anything, right? And why should we actually take it? Why should we practice such thing, right? They would try to convince you not take this path of exercising meditation in this Descartesian philosophical sort of way by actually resorting to a Pyrrhonian or academic skepticism itself, by saying, which of course, as I mentioned, Descartes is not those. By saying that, well, they would expect that once the skeptic had been answered, our claims to knowledge would be much more as they were before we raised the radical skeptical worry. So nothing changes. So maybe you shouldn't do it at all. Descartes sees the problems and prospects of philosophy very differently from both how we see today, going through this ossification of philosophy, but also very different, from other sort of philosophers that have come before him. So what we are going to do is really appreciate the sheer brilliance of this procedure of meditation. So in the first meditation, Descartes briefly raises ordinary grounds for doubting beliefs, but he gives his attention mainly to radical grounds for doubt. First things that he does, he offers the dream argument and its sister argument called the lunacy argument, which calls into doubt even the most evident of the beliefs we get from our senses. For example, my present belief that my hand is in front of me. The present belief that I actually have a hand. The present belief that I actually am sitting here in this body talking to you. Present belief that you are interacting with me. Then it gives us, the God argument. But this is not God. This is a deceiving God. Of ultimate deceitful cunning. We're talking about Antichrist level. And then, of course, its sister argument, which is, which is designed to thwart atheists, which calls into doubt not just sense-based belief, but also beliefs about what we can grasp clearly and distinctly, in Descartes' own words. Like the belief that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Any sort of, imagine that this deceitful God is so almighty and powerful and cunning that infiltrates any sort of your beliefs, inner beliefs, right? Beliefs that are absolutely appear to you as clear and as distinct as possible. Now, Descartes resolves to suspend judgment about all of the beliefs to which these radical arguments apply. And then at the beginning, so he sees that, we talked about the meditation requires a certain sort of modesty, of depth diving. What Linka was talking about, the space, is a certain sort of consciousness of that space in which you are falling into and out of which you are coming back, right? And Descartes, at this point, at the end of the first meditation, he thinks that maybe he has gone too far now. It's not a meditation anymore. And he then starts the second meditation, right? The second meditation, now he has worried really to utmost degrees that he has left himself in a position of suspending judgment about not just a few things, but literally everything. Everything. Then suddenly he discovers, however, that I exist can somehow be salvaged. It can be salvaged. That even going deep diving into this ocean, there would be something that one can, bring back to the surface. Something can be salvaged from this ocean, from the bottom of it. And indeed, he can also be certain of claims in which he attributes conscious states to himself. Then the second meditation ends and the third meditation starts. He literally meditates here. And in fact, now, ever more, this I that he's talking about becoming more confused. Confused, meaning integrated together. The I, the biographical I of the ego, the I of angel in the machine, the robot, the ghost in the machine, or I as the I of first-person consciousness, right? Which can be everyone and anyone. So, yeah, so thematically, these eyes are starting to become extremely weird, to the point that reader, us, can't keep track of which one it is. And that's the whole point. Descartes does not want you anymore to try to find out which I is there in this meditations, in this later meditations. Because literally, there is no distinction between them anymore. Right? So in the third meditation, he helps himself both to the causal principle that effects cannot be greater than their causes, and the subsidiary principle that the cause of an idea must contain, at least, in his own words, as much formal reality as the idea has of, in his own words, objective reality. Right? So the third meditation is about cause, and cause, this is now, we are getting into certain sort of territories which are highly arcane. And Descartes essentially trying to, because, he has gone through the first meditation, second meditation, he knows, how he should meditate from now on. He has leveled up in the game of philosophy. Now he's, tackling with new bosses. And one of these bosses that actually unlock other meditations, which are, again, more profound, is, as I said, the principle of cause, right? One, as I said, that the causal principle, that effects cannot be greater than their causes. And the other one, the cause of an idea must contain at least as much formal reality as the idea has of objective reality. Then he argues that given his certainty that he exists and has an idea of God, at this point he has arrived at the idea of certainty of God, and his certainty that the causal principles are true, he can be certain that his cause or creator is God, a perfect being, and not a deceitful one. When he says perfect being, it means it does not deceive. Right. This in turn assures him that his mind has been created so that his clear and distinct ideas are true. In the fifth and the sixth meditations, he draws upon a number of clear and distinct ideas to show that, he can be certain that his beliefs in mathematics are true, and that at least Some of his beliefs about the world of material things are true too. And in fact, they are all true. Well, we'll figure. During the course of these reflections or meditations, then he recognizes that he can't clearly understand the nature of his own mind of material things unless he thinks of them as entirely distinct. Mind as a non-extended consciousness, and material things as non-conscious extended beings. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So now we are going to. So, does anyone want to say something?
No, I just wanted to jump in and ask if you wanted to maybe talk about presentations or something for
yes,
people have to start leaving. I was told we could go a little over today, but it seems like people do have to maybe leave, so maybe just
yes. No, I actually also intend to finish it in 20 minutes. Yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do with presentations?
You're asking me?
I mean, anyone, doesn't matter.
I just wanted to open it up in case you had anything to say about it at this point. We could also talk
presentation. Do we want to like two recordings for each session? Volunteers, two or three, three probably, because three presentations. Literally, please, no more than 5 minutes each, right? And essentially, if you can do it, you record it either as an audio file or a video file, and you upload it to our Google Drive, I don't know, like 2 days before max 2 days before, next session. I think that would be nice. So we will watch it, and then we will discuss briefly about each of the presentations.
Okay, cool. And I'll try to get like a spreadsheet going or something. So if
Sure. I mean, are there any volunteers who want to be the first sacrificial lambs? No volunteers. Well, then Ravi is going to, toss a coin.
Oh, you said I have to do the presentation.
Okay.
No, yeah. All right. Yeah. I'll pick someone random, or we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Over the internet or something. I'll share a spreadsheet with people and they can sign.
Sure. No worries. So. And of course, meditation, I mean, when we are talking about majority of philosophers, I mean, people who are, formally educated as philosophers, most probably they have read, majority of them, of course, not all, but majority of them most probably have just read meditations, right? But of course, what we are trying to do in this seminar is, of course, we are going to tackle meditation and the figure of the meditator, but essentially bring meditation to the foreground, showing that what does actually it does to Descartes himself, to his philosophy, right? And not just to his philosophy, but also to philosophy in general, what he comes up with, right? What sort of things now, thoughts, elevated thoughts can he bring to the table now that he has gone into the depth of the ocean and came back, surprisingly, right? And so we are going to then, look at, earlier works, method, other versions of it after the meditations, but also, passions of the souls, to kind of bring it, again, give that weight, the proper weight to literally that book that usually formally educated philosophers are familiar with when you're saying Descartes, right? Meditations. So we want to really going through this oblique pathway just to underline the radicality of meditations as an achievement of human mind and human spirit. So, you know, of course, we are going to talk about method precisely because in method, we can talk about AI, we can talk about other sorts of stuff, but also about mechanisms, right? Which I think that it should be talked about. And we have both mechanisms of mind and mechanisms of bodies, right? And in method, Descartes wants to have the mechanisms of mind, right? Kind of like certain sort of algorithms or conditions for certain sort of algorithms. And these conditions, what you might say that, what are these sort of conditions for these algorithms? What are they good for? Well, essentially, Descartes is trying to make a computer with angels in it. And he wants to introduce you to some of these conditions through which you can create certain sort of algorithms to direct mind in a specific sort of directions. Right? Proto-angels, so to speak. And then he wants to introduce passions, so you can supplement it with these passions, with these sort of machines, and then just find the body and then put all together, and voila, you have a special form of computer. So Descartes' own interest in method really led him to concern himself with how to generate and analyze empirical data. Many people try to talk about method that, oh, Descartes is really just like, proto big data processor, a proto-empiricist of some sort. No. Descartes is not dealing with this sort of, lowly goals in his philosophy, to parse to empirical data. Obviously, half-baked machine can do this far better than angels in the machines, right? Which are called humans. Those sort of special computers. Descartes is not really interested in this sort of stuff. It's like finds it parochial. Of course, he can talk about it. So he doesn't want to, he's not concerned himself with how to generate and analyze empirical data in answer to a scientific question. Rather, he was nearly always more interested in how to find the correct way to pose or conceptualize a problem. Because it is through the problem that mind takes different directions. And he was convinced that there would always be some way of describing the route to this correct conceptualization that would equally well describe a route to insight into virtually everything else. That's a task of a computer, really. But not computers that we today know, computers that we are, computers that we must make, that we must recognize. So, therefore, when he achieved success in one area, he sought to describe his procedure very generally. So he could turn to other areas, go on the same way there as well. For example, he found his success in mathematics especially useful in the rules for the direction of the mind, the discourse on the method. He apparently wanted his descriptions of these methods of discovery to enable his readers to use their minds in this distinct way, too. And of course, some of these general, descriptions are so general that they often, to a person who doesn't actually understand what Descartes is trying to do, they often look like platitudes or truisms, right? Like, for example, the advice in the discourse on method that he makes, make enumeration so complete and reviews so comprehensive that you can be sure of leaving nothing out. That's a platitude, but he has to have it, right? It's just like making an instruction for the construction of that sort of computer, right? Doesn't need, so it's like, kind of like somehow tautologies of logic or tautologies of computer science. He has to put the tautology, some of the platitudes there because they need to be there from the point of the axiomatics that he has been, trying to think about. So when Descartes refers to the method of universal doubts, he means a method. So you see, so he talks about methods of the mind, but the method of doubts is a different sort of method. So he has so many different methods, right? And we can talk about them algorithmically, non-algorithmically, so on and so forth, and stuff. But these are all sort of, by the way, results of meditations themselves that he has arrived at. That's just surprising. But so he wants to reserve a special status, a very unique status for the method of doubt, as opposed, as in contrast to other sort of methods. Because without the method of doubt, you can't have any of the other ones. The method of doubt, hence, is literally what opens the gate to all of this stuff. So when Descartes refers to the method of universal doubt, he means a method that it begins with consideration of grounds for radical skeptical doubt. This is a highly distinctive method of inquiry, though in both rules and discourse, Descartes say things as, he strains for a high enough level of generality that sound as though he thinks any decent method of discovery in some sort of way at the end of the day will require using the method of doubt in one way or another, depending on the context of that specific rule or that specific route of inquiry, right? It's not as if the scientist should use the method of doubt spiritually in order to address the method of a specific inquiry that it takes. Well, Descartes actually advises that, yes, you have to do that too, because, these are all connected. This is the whole point here, with regard to the meditation. But you should also, specifically formulate it as a scientist as the method of doubt with regard to the route, inquiry route, and with regard to the, essentially the method and rules that you are using in your own context. So, and, the same applies to mathematics, physical, psychological, natural sciences, so on and so forth. In Rule 2, Descartes, for example, calls upon us by saying that to believe only what is perfectly known and capable of being doubted. And that may sound as if he's propounding the method of doubt as at least a part of the method of getting at the truth of things. He isn't actually. Instead of telling us to rest our beliefs by raising the radical skeptical doubts, he's actually encouraging us to reject merely probable cognition in that sense. He notes that, by using this sort of rule 2, we will straightway accept the evident propositions of mathematics. And it may even be that we will accept such obvious non-mathematical claims as, here is my hand, right? But of course, the method of doubt, requires us to suspend judgment about mathematical claims and obvious non-mathematical claims like here is a hand. Nowhere in the rules does the general method of discovery involve the procedure dictated by the method of doubt. Now, in discourse, Descartes doesn't describe the method of doubt as the special method he used to investigate in meditations, the method through which the foundations of philosophy, the first principles of philosophy, are being revealed, salvaged, right? But rather, the general method he described there isn't the method of doubt. True, the first of its 4 rules is never to accept anything as true if I did not have evident knowledge of its truth, that it is carefully to avoid precipitate conclusions and preconceptions, and to include nothing more in my judgments than what presents itself to my mind so clearly and so distinctly that I had no occasion to doubt it. But Descartes goes on to say that his first applications of this rule and the 3 others concern problems in mathematics. A little later, he adds that by using this general method, he was able to solve many problems in optics, even meteorology. Clearly, he didn't mean to be saying that he conducted these investigations by starting with, say, the dream argument. So Descartes envisioned methods for achieving knowledge that did not pose the challenge of radical skepticism in that sense. And indeed, such methods occupied more of his attention over the years than the special method of doubt did. But the moment of that meditation, that unholy meditation, which is the meditations itself, the book, nevertheless paved the road, right? As he said, he had done it. It doesn't need to go and repeat it again. Now, the consequences are other sort of stuff, right? Toward his later books. So, but two points here. The first is that Descartes associates the method of doubt with a special subject matter. It's the method he turns to when he begins to search for the foundations of any philosophy more certain than the commonly accepted one. That's a magnificent sort of thing, This is that idea of the Rückfrage I was talking about, but now applied to philosophy itself. Rückfrage, the questioning back, stripping back, like what Reza was talking about, stripping back those skins, achieving a philosophy, right? Essentially, that is more certain than the commonly accepted one. And this, he says this in discourse. And it is the method he uses for exploring first philosophy, or first principles of philosophy, as the full title of the meditations tells us. So the subtitle of the meditation tells us something about this special subject matter. It concerns the existence of God and the distinction between the human soul and the body. Now, it is quite very revelatory here, what Descartes is trying to do with Christians and atheists of his own time. And particularly with the philosophical understanding of the certainty of God and what it can do to human beings, to these computers. Hence, the subtitle has the word God in it. It's not about some meditations about the objective reality of things, a treatise on nature, on human nature and stuff. No. The existence of God and the distinction between the human soul and the body. And it has nothing to do with the idea that whether Descartes was a religious person, a Roman Catholic or not. No. Descartes literally doesn't care about if he's a Roman Catholic or not. Descartes is only interested that he's a philosopher, courageous enough to create a very, very dangerous task called meditation to the end. And this meditation has only one consequence: reaching the subtitle. Right. Now, this has misleadingly, led, of course, as I said, sometimes philosophers just want to make philosophy more boring, more bland. So this subtitle has led to some of the worst, bland, self-pious identifications, right? This is like the worst sort of subtitle. And this is what Descartes ultimately is. And this is just giving all these watered down interpretation of Descartes. Right. So Descartes, Josie, I will go, let me just finish this part and then we go with your question. So this has misleadingly, Descartes aims to establish all of the following substantive principles in the course of meditations and by way of exercising this unholy procedure. God, one, God, a perfect being, exists. Two, we ought to assent only to what we understand clearly and distinctly. Three, the essential attribute of material things is extension, the continuous quantity studied in mathematics. Four, the essential attribute of the human mind is thought, and the mind is a different substance from the human body. Five, human sense experience allows us to know that material things exist and affect our sense organs. It can usually be trusted to indicate what we should pursue and avoid. But although patterns of change in our sense experience do reflect patterns of change in the material things that affect us. So senses do two things for us, they're trustable in terms of what can be pursued and avoided. I mean, trustable to a certain sort of degree, but also this whole idea, that senses are good for, registering patterns of change, or patterns, in fact, patterns. Senses are good for essentially detecting patterns in a quite contemporary AI sort of sense, patterns of, experience, patterns of change in material things that affect us, and so on and so forth. So we shouldn't attribute to material things the qualities with which our sense experience directly acquaints us. Not only these are substantive claims, as we will go over it, many of them were actually highly controversial, in Descartes' times, and of course, in our time. They're also, in an intuitive sense, foundational. They tell us what basic kinds of things they are and how we can and cannot hope to learn something about them. Essentially, Descartes, one of the things that Descartes wants to do also throughout this meditation, as I said, he's a sly sort of philosopher. He wants to set in motion certain sort of procedures where basically you get the best of all possible worlds, wrested from whoever that resists to give it to you. And one of these things that he also wants to get is to bring back metaphysics, to show how metaphysics is important for philosophy. And if you try to do away with metaphysics, then you are in a very, very shady sort of business, which we are going to get back to it. So Josie, and that was my lecture for today, and we are taking questions.
Well, mind-body dualism is certainly very controversial in metaphysics, but the way this session has introduced that to me makes me wonder if how Bergson introduces mind-body dualism in Matter and Memory, like his own version of dualism, how close or how far away that is from the Cartesian one, because I thought they were very much incompatible, but this session is making me question that.
Okay. I have to go back and read Bergson again, the mind body. Would you be able, Josie, would you be able to get some relevant pages of Bergson's book, Matter and Memory, and put it on the Google Doc so we can look at it?
Sure, I will do that.
Yeah, that would be magnificent. So we can just look at it. And I need to kind of, jump start my memory about some of those stuff in Bergson.
Well, to give a brief summary, the way Bergson presents it as a dynamic relationship between the actual and virtual. So the body is actual and the mind is virtual, and in a way, they both prefigure each other and lead each other, like in a sort of dance.
Yes, yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. Well, yes, I will definitely put the computer science one, which is again kind of like this, but in theoretical computer science terms, about the duality of mind and body, not dualism that people introduce Descartes as, but a computational duality. Yes, completely in the sense that you talked about.
I think maybe we should try to cut the recording at this point.
Okay, let's cut the recording.
With everyone,
sure.
And just throwing it out there that we can still continue the conversation on Discord or Google Hangouts if people want to do that. But yeah, I was just told to give like 30 to 40 minutes extra for this session. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. My apologies, Ravi. Yes.
Oh, no, it's totally fine.
Oh, by the way, I completely forgot. I always, for some reason, I always thought that the sessions start 10:30, but then I noticed it was 10. So yeah, 12:30.
Yeah, it is 10.
Yes, I thought that we have only gone 8 minutes over. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah. So technically, it's supposed to be 12:30, but it's
Yes. My apologies. My sincere apologies.
It's okay. All right, I'm just gonna cut the meeting. It was really good to meet everyone. Again, my email is there in the chat, so make sure you copy that down before I end the session. And yeah, we'll correspond again about readings and presentations and stuff like that.
Okay, love you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.